Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce the next session covering a very important topic for every entrepreneur in today's day: how to raise a round in today's compressed marketplace. The moderator for our panel is Mr. Navsher Singh, one of the Silicon Valley's youngest venture investors at Liberty Global Ventures. I'm honored to recognize the eminent paddle. Our panelists are Mr. Gary Gaba, founder and managing director of the CXO Fund, Ms. Shruti Gandhi, founder and managing partner at Array Ventures, and Mr. Ankur Prakash, partner at Liberty Global Ventures. I would request the panel to come to the stage, and the podium is yours to chair.
Panelists for your time and with us today, and the organizers over at EVOLV for giving us this opportunity to all come together. We're here today in the middle of a seemingly unparalleled time of volatility and uncertainty. Over the past couple of years, we witnessed the stock market and asset prices ascend to new heights. The private market experienced a deluge of funding, with valuations skyrocketing as capital markets evolved in pretty unpredicted ways. This huge flow of capital was a catalyst for growth and innovation across industries, with investors and entrepreneurs ultimately reaping the related benefits. Now, the landscape shifted pretty dramatically. We find ourselves navigating the challenges of a hawkish Federal Reserve, escalating rates, and looming systemic risks to the banking sector, all worsened by heightened regulatory scrutiny on tech companies. A sweeping risk-off sentiments emerged, leading to a pretty sharp contraction in capital markets. As we explore the complexities of valuation compression and fundraising activity in this pretty dynamic context, we look forward to the insights of our esteemed panelists. Together, we'll dive into the strategies and perspectives necessary for startup founders and executives to succeed in this evolving economic climate. So to set the stage, we'll go down the line and ask all the panelists to briefly describe your fund and what your areas of focus are.
Hi everybody, I'm Shruti Gandhi. I run Array Ventures. We invest in enterprise data companies, pre-seed stage. Our average check size is about $1.5 million. We're usually the first investor on the cap table. I'll stop at that.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ankur Prakash. I'm a partner at Liberty Global Ventures. So we're a corporate fund. We're backed by Liberty Global, which many of you may know or not, but our parent company owns many telcos and cable operators focused in Europe. So brands like Virgin Media, brands like O2 from UK, or Sunrise in Switzerland, they all sort of roll up into Liberty. And so Liberty, manages many of these assets directly or not. We, myself and Nav, we're part of the venture investment team, and we essentially invest in three broad categories: telecom software, enterprise software, and Web3. And typically we would come in, we come in between Series A and Series C, sort of as our sweet spot. And we, invest $7 to $10 million typically as your initial check size. With that.
No, thank you guys. Great groups. This is Gary Gaba. I'm the founder and MD of the CXO Fund. Prior to that, I've built multiple companies, and all the companies I've built, they were self-funded, bootstrapped, and I was fortunate to have successful exits. And then I said, let's change the dynamics, right? How do we help the young entrepreneurs or emerging entrepreneurs or corporate guys to get into the entrepreneurial stream and learn from the complexities and challenges? The focus of the CXO Fund is all around curating companies and avoiding the challenges which I personally faced when building the companies. So cybersecurity is a big focus area, quantum, conversational AI, voice AI, everything focused on AI. And I know your comment around the market stuff, all the three companies I built, they were at the worst possible times. So to me, this is the best time to launch a company, and don't let the market conditions put a fear in you. You got to step up the game. But I'll talk more about that.
Awesome, thank you guys. So what I want to start with is this. What are you telling your founders today? What kind of conversations are you having with their CEOs about how to navigate what's going on right now?
At the end of the day, you got to really understand the big business problem you're trying to solve. And let's take a step back. Obviously, the market is tough. If you don't have enough money in the bank, then figure out what your burn is, cut your burn, and extend your runway. That's the number one thing. Have enough cash in the bank where you're good for next 18 to 24 months. If not, figure out a path, right? Cut your burn. Figure out how to cut deals, depending on, my focus is more on the enterprise side. Figure out, cut multi-year deals, right? And see how you can go raise money. Get into the mode of convertible debt, give favorable deals. So that's on the money side. But on the customer side, if you know the business problems you're solving, double down. This is the best time. You're looking, majority of corporations are cutting people, okay? And if your product can replace 3 different products, you are God for them. Because not only you're making them more efficient, let's just take cybersecurity, which is a big issue. Obviously based on what's happening in Ukraine, Russia, the number of cyber attacks have gone up. We are truly in the world of cyber war. And with the SEC pretty much pushing, you got to have a CISO on the board. That's a big priority. But, they're getting their hands shackled. You got to cut costs. And how will they cut costs? If your product can help them be more secure, take cost out, you're the hero. So you got to really understand what the market conditions are, which you do, and how do you propose a solution which will make them more efficient and close some deals out there. And don't be afraid to cut people. When I built my first company, the big issue was when you hire people, it's very tough to part ways. And you're not doing justice to yourself, shareholders, and your team, right? If there are people who are not performing, don't hesitate, right? And optimize the burn. And double down, listening to the customers, what their problems are, and keep going.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Gary. I think obviously cash is important and runway is important. You always want to have a second shot as markets improve. But I think a couple of other things to maybe add to what Gary said. What we're telling our founders is, use the capital efficiently. So while you do want to cut costs and burn, just cutting costs doesn't really make you successful. I think it is really important to double down on the original thesis. Most founders go through like an exercise of product market fit and definition of the initial, ideal customer profile, and we do that collaboratively with all of our founders. But in this stage, I was actually reading a report somewhere, I think in 2023, the average sales cycles have increased by almost 25 to 30%. So what does that mean? That means that basically you're spending more time and more capital in getting that one customer. So in these markets, we're just basically doing that whole product market fit exercise, particularly for Series A, Series B companies, where we thought we knew it and we thought we know what the ideal customer is. We're sort of doing that again. We're taking a maniacal approach and saying, really, are we really going and hitting the right customers? And if you do that exercise, you'll find that you can actually cut costs and actually be very efficient and go really target those customers where you will actually see a lot of return initially. So that's one thing. And then the second thing to add just is, this is a great opportunity. Markets are down, every big business is cutting costs, and this is the time when actually you can make customers for life. So we index more towards, and I guide my founders to index more towards, retaining logos. Make sure you get more logo velocity. ARR is good, revenue is good, and it is really important. But if you have to sort of index one way or the other, I think just maintain that customer relationship. This is a great time to build customers for life.
I think I agree with, on the cash side. I will just position it a little differently. What I say to my founders is, how much money do you have in the bank, and the milestones you will reach with that runway, is that relevant enough? So if you have about 12 months and you think you're gonna get, I don't know, $1 million ARR, is that good enough for the next round of funding? And we work backwards from that. And it's important exercise because at the end of the day, you talk to the founders and they're working really hard and they kind of stop and say like, I'm not sure if that's an important milestone. I'm not sure if I'll get to the next phase or whatever it is. And so we work with that in mind and then trim, increase runway, whatever we need to do according to that. The second important thing that I talk about is where is your company placed today with the new trends in the market, especially with ChatGPT? And how relevant are you? So that kind of shakes everybody up a little bit. The other way to position that is 10 years from now, do you see yourself relevant with the progress in AI that is happening at the pace and speed of light today? And most people step back and say, I'm not sure. So that's a good exercise also to say, like, do we need to change course today? I know we started companies even a year ago, not that long ago, but the pace and innovation in AI has been rapid in the last few months. And how do we kind of adapt that into our own tech stack? So that's been a pretty good exercise as well. And a lot of our companies, it actually has helped them shape their future in an amazing way. They've, kind of come up with newer product lines, build accelerated products just based on this tech, had a new thinking around where they are positioned and where they will be, 5-10 years from now.
At the end of the day, right, depends on what stage you are. If you're just starting, your Series A, Series B, Series C, you know your company the best. Common sense prevails, right? So you got to just make educated decisions based on the data. But again, right, as we have mentioned, cash is the king. And having built and operated companies, right, things we are doubling down. We love these cloud providers, but they're like freaking leeches, right? They charge a lot of money. You got to figure out, right, how do you optimize your cloud costs? And hopefully there's nobody from Google, Amazon, Microsoft, but for the startups, right? That's a big number. Some of the companies which I said on board, they're spending $300K a month. That's a whole lot of money. Some are $1 million a month, right? So you got to look at every single element, how you can generate more cash. Generative AI, absolutely. You got to pay attention, but don't let it defocus you from what you are good at, and you got to figure out how you weave that in your roadmap because everybody is going to be asking. All right, where's Ram Reddy? Ram, what is ChatGPT? What are you asking them and what are they telling you about you? Okay.
He's the greatest guy on earth.
All right. And then the question I asked ChatGPT, can you tell me which is my favorite wine? And they said, sorry, we can't get into your likings and dislikings, right? So there's still a journey. It's a lot of...
Problem is you keep changing your favorite wine every day.
Yeah, depending on which Gary shows up, Ram. But think about it, right? Generative AI. Why did Microsoft invest this kind of money? It's going to increase the damn cloud usage like no tomorrow, right? It's a strategic decision, and obviously there will be a lot of ethical elements which will be coming in as well. If you talk to the Gen Z, in their mind, right, generative AI is going to take over, right? And humans may not exist 30 years from now. That's the extreme. So again, right, to your point, Shruti, right, so they need to think about this, how they weave that in the roadmap. Can they survive with new ideas coming up? But again, common sense prevails, and you got to, your company the best, people around you the best, and the customers, and just be smart about it.
So, you've obviously talked about Gen AI and Cyber a little bit, and obviously I think enterprise is a lot of deals getting done right now, and I'm curious to see if you guys think that there are any sectors or industries that are kind of most resilient to the economic conditions and valuation compression right now.
I would say, going back to cybersecurity, that problem is going to continue to grow, and there are a lot of deal flow in that area. And I personally don't see that going down. Like if you see the number of attacks, obviously human is the number one risk factor, and you're seeing a big push around the identity and access management area. It's a very complex problem, and one product is not going to solve it. And so that will not, at the end of the day, VCs are VCs, right? They're going to try to get the best deal for the LPs, right? But they will not nickel dime on companies which are solving a big business problem, and the time is right. Obviously, with the generative AI, new funds are being created, and people come with good ideas, right? That will be less impacted. In the other areas, right, really, I think people will be taking a step back and really ensuring, and they're not going to be short-sighted. They're going to look at a bigger view of how big of a business problem you're solving. How big is the TAM? And obviously the people. They're investing in people, problem, business problem, and the addressable market. And people will get good deals, but certain areas I think will be less impacted. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I think the two areas maybe that I'm pretty bullish on. One is I think cyber is really important. That's sort of like an evergreen area. I think for cloud, to me, I think still remains a I'm very bullish on the cloud. I know the cloud providers get very expensive for all of our companies actually, but cloud to me has always been kind of like this massive computational, paradigm shift, kind of like how we moved from mainframes to client server, and then we moved from client server to virtualization. I think cloud computing is sort of kind of like that, and with what was said earlier about the digital transformation that is happening throughout the world, I mean, I think there is a very small percentage of businesses that are on the cloud even today. And, I think Andy Jassy mentioned like 5% number, and there's different numbers floating around. But the point is that there's still a lot of businesses that are in the legacy environment. Many businesses probably still running mainframes. And I think that's the opportunity. So, I mean, our valuation is going to get depressed in the short term? Probably. But, as venture investors, we are all long-term investors. And, if you're the idea of building iconic companies, then I think cloud has a lot of potential still. So that's one area that we're still pretty bullish about. The second one is just around semiconductors. I think semiconductors is an area that is underfunded in the last decade. And primarily because, building software companies on cloud has become so cheap. I mean, you can start a company with $5 million and actually get product market fit in $10 million. So, building a semiconductor company has always been hard. But I also think that Moore's Law is coming to a stage where, it is tapping out. And, with all the AI stuff that is happening, I think CPUs and GPUs are going to be pushed to their extremes. And if OpenAI has to really become consumer grade, it cannot be running at cents per query. That is just not scalable. So I think there is going to be a need and an opportunity around semiconductor investments as well.
Agree with all the categories. I'll just add that the current solution I'm looking for is how to avoid bank runs. I'm just kidding. I think the content proliferation because of AI has been pretty high. All the things we thought that were solved even a few years ago are not solved today. I can't look at my email today and just focus anymore. The amount of spam I get even in my priority inbox is very high. So areas like that where I can catch fake content, generated content is pretty high on my list to bring productivity and focus back in many areas. I mean, think about it, like all the SIM alerting solution, even in security, so many areas are just kind of inundated with, Slack alerts and such, and we're just inundated with like just the kind of focus we need is really high. It's a lot to sift through all this noise, so I'm focused on a lot of that content prioritization.
Maybe just to add another element, right? Obviously, generative AI will change the dynamics across, right? So one of the things which will be important, right, with this new shift, right, everybody's going to be looking for efficiencies. And I agree, the cloud usage, I think 600 billion now by 2023, 25% year-over growth, 49% of the data is going to reside in cloud by 2025, 179 zettabytes of data by 2025. Zettabyte is 21 zeros. And so, leveraging generative AI, think about, right, today if you look at, like I'm just giving a specific example, what Nielsen or Cantor does, they get people in the room, get their ideas, right? That business is going to be extinct because you can leverage generative AI to get consumer insights in a matter of seconds. So looking at, right, some of the solutions which exist today and leveraging technology as it has evolved, right, that's an area we got to all look at in a bigger way.
Yeah, I think the content moderation is going to be a huge, huge problem. Every day I go on Twitter and I see a lot of things that I think are real, and then it turns out it's all mid-journey stuff that came out. So we definitely have to get better about fixing those issues. How should founders right now adjust their fundraising strategy? So say if you did raise 18, 24 months ago, and you're kind of at the point where now you do need to go raise additional capital, and it's hard to go get a price equity round. What do? Do you give a lot of credence to alternative financing strategies such as venture debt, revenue-based financing, or would you kind of recommend something else entirely?
I think all those options are on the table, and really boils down to what your cap table looks like today, and what is the best thing for the founders and the existing shareholders. Like there are certain companies, if I take the word of, let's just say crypto, a blockchain, which is under extreme pressure right now, with what happened with FTX, right? And a lot of the companies who have term sheets, regulatory pressure is so high, which I think our government needs to think through, because outside the US it's much more easier. They're leaning back on their existing investors, and they are coming up with a term sheet 20% discount to next round, and say if you have existing investors, they will gravitate towards that route, so you can prevent a down round, which is not beneficial for anybody, right? So that is a very powerful vehicle. And obviously, a lot of the companies out here in Silicon Valley were banking with Silicon Valley Bank. They're figuring out what happened to their line of credits, right? It's all up in the air, right? So depending on where you are with the cash in the bank, you got to be smart about it and just figure out the best way. A convertible at a 20% discount to next round is probably the best route. And if you can figure out a funding round, which is may not be what you were expecting, but it's still an uptick, right? Don't be greedy, right? And you can step it up later.
Yeah, so I think from, to add to, obviously, cash is king. You want to get as much cash as you can. But also, fundraising has always been tough. It's never, even though 2 years back, there was a lot of capital flowing. Fundraising for a founder is always a tough job. It's not a very easy job. So to me, I think in this environment, it's become even tougher. So you just have to step back a little bit, look at sort of the milestones that you were talking about earlier, look at some of the product market fit, that exercise that you've gone through many times, and raising capital, whether it's a down round or, if you don't have product market fit, you probably have to pivot, and, down rounds obviously result in dilution, so that's obviously one option. But the one thing that I also tell my founders is many of my founders, everybody here in the Valley, everybody wants to really go big and create the next unicorn and decacorn and whatnot. And sometimes it's just best to also step back and say, okay, are there short-term M&A options around the table as well? sometimes, a smaller M&A can generate more value to the founders and employees and investors than trying to take a dilution and going for another 2-3 years. So you have to take that into account as well. The M&A option doesn't come naturally to most founders, especially in the early stages of the business. But in this environment, I think, a lot of big companies have very strong balance sheets, and I think there will be strong M&A options as well in the next 12 months. So it's something you should step back. I don't think there's any shame in selling a business for $200, $500 million. I think that's a great outcome, frankly speaking. Exactly. So, when we make an investment, all of our VCs, everybody talks about becoming the next unicorn, but you have to be smart about it at the end of the day, because, time is a lot of value as well. And so in this market, I think, other than adding all the dimensions of convertible notes and stuff, I think you should also just look at potential M&A. And M&A doesn't really happen instantaneously. M&A is a dance that you have to do with every big corporate, and it takes time. And so you should keep that at the back of your mind. And it's a process that you have to go through, and you have to make sure you have enough balance sheet, enough capital in your balance sheet to generate the value. So yeah, that's just something that every startup should think through.
I'll take 200 to 500 million acquisitions. For us, it's difficult. Founders never raised enough to last for a long time to begin with. It's pre-seed. They're raising $1 million to $2 million max. And so that really just means you either prove it out, raise the next round. What is difficult in this market is the next round has been more conservative and gun shy. So what has actually helped with a lot of our founders is either kind of evaluating, again, based on what I mentioned before, where do they fit into the new world, or figuring out their new milestones to get the raise. But most importantly, actually about a third of our portfolio raised money last year just from either internal folks on the cap table or friends and family. And the friends and family rounds were safe notes, either flat rounds or, I don't know, like a few $1 million extra bonus kind of a thing, but not that different. But that just gave them, a runway that was longer than what they had today, which was a year, maybe took them to 2 years. And that has really given them a breathing room to go out and weather this market. And that continues to happen. In fact, a couple of our companies took money the weekend of the SVB fiasco. There were amazing angels out there just giving money to meet the payrolls. That didn't end up happening, but founders ended up meeting some really star investors in that process that kind of were out there, showing their true colors, which was amazing, helping founders out in a time of need. So that has been a pretty valuable process for us. Again, it's not a price round, it's not a markup, but it's money in the bank that is going to really help you extend your runway.
Just to add, by the way, I agree with you on the M&A route, and I encourage all the entrepreneurs, even repeat entrepreneurs, right? You got to always get that dating process started earlier on. It takes time. But the second piece, right, and Liberty's out here, right? You got to lean on your strategic investments, right, from the corporations. Easier to work with the corporations versus otherwise, right? And the third piece, if you are a repeat entrepreneur, right, put more skin in the game. Put your more money from your pocket, because that builds serious confidence in investors when you're putting your own money in the company. But every entrepreneur cannot do that, but the ones we can, I think that will help you in a big way.
Absolutely. So I think we've got time for one more question. What I want to ask is, as we come out of this economic cycle, what do you think is going to stick? What long-term trends do you foresee emerging for not just VCs, but the entire startup ecosystem? Are we saying to hell with growth at all costs and going more towards sustainable profitability? Is there anything else that you think is going to come out of this that's really going to inform kind of the next upcycle that we have?
To me, the fundamentals never change, right? And one thing which I really hate when entrepreneurs, there is a lot of money. Now I want to get an office in Palo Alto. Guys, don't do that, all right? Okay, it does not really mean your office could be in a shack, right? As long as you are creating value, building IP, and driving shareholder value. So just be super smart in terms of how you are spending every penny is coming out of your pocket. So profitability, we say cash is the king, but profitability is the godfather, right? If you have cash in the bank, everybody's going to be coming running. So those fundamentals don't change. But obviously they're businesses, right? You got to invest, right? And so that's a decision, right? The entrepreneur has to make. But you cannot walk away from fundamentals. If you want to be in a strong position on negotiation table, right? Show much bigger gross profit margins. Show how you're going to turn cash flow positive, right? And one other thing, right, to your earlier question, I do want to kind of share with the entrepreneurs, right? Depending on stage of the company you are, even the founder-led positioning and sales, nobody can beat that. So just if you have hired a CRO, does not mean deals are going to get done. You got to be engaged to show the value. To me, a technical founder is a freaking best pre-sales solution architect you can ever ask for. And profitability is critical, and figuring out the right team around you is very critical. And we all make mistakes, and don't be afraid of making mistakes, but don't repeat them. Learn from them and adapt and move forward.
Yeah, and I think, I'm still pretty bullish on the industry. I think the broader industry is going to be fine. This is a cycle that happens every 10 years with the VC industry. So I think the fundamentals are going to remain strong. I feel, valuations may come down a little bit, but overall, I think as we emerge from this, I think fundamentally what Silicon Valley did was always create disruptions in massive industries, and I think that's probably going to continue. As far as just us, working with entrepreneurs or doing even newer deals, I think we at Liberty were always sort of thesis driven. We weren't very sort of momentum-ish investors, even though, looking back 2 years, maybe we would revisit some of the valuations that we did. But I think our thesis remains the same. We want to invest in teams that have some revenue, some traction. We want to invest in founders who are going to be with us for the next 7 years to 10 years, whatever. We continue to drive both strategic and financial value. So I think thesis-driven investments, overall industry remains pretty much the same. I'm pretty bullish that I think in a few years we're going to bounce back and it's going to be pretty okay for everybody. Yeah.
I agree. We are a first investor, which means there is a 10+ year time horizon. If you find a good team right now that is going in with eyes wide open, still willing and hungry to solve those problems, we want to back them. We're Array, which, a data fund. And data has always been at the core of everything we do. It continues to be the case even in the generation of AI tech right now. So for me, I agree that is where the future is, and we're going to continue investing in all the core infrastructure needed to promote this tech.
So I think one of the things, right, is we will come out of this. Nothing lasts forever. This shall pass away. And as I was mentioning earlier, right, this is the best time to start companies, or we use the term evolve, right, as you're learning based on what's happening in the marketplace. And I'll also encourage, right, India is in a different place now. And we got to leverage India in a bigger manner as we are thinking about deeper innovation, right? There's great talent out there. Obviously, it doesn't matter what part of the world is, people are people, they will move around, right? But if you can find the right quarterback in India and establish a good place out there, we can leverage India in a massive way to turbocharge the companies out here in a big way.
Awesome. So we're not going to stand between all of you and lunch anymore. Thank you all for listening, and thank you guys so much for your time and insights today. I really appreciate it.